Issue 2, the end of days.
The status quo is unsustainable. If we don't act, and act soon, to bring down costs, it will jeopardize everybody's health care.
The cost of U.S. health care is ballooning at a compounding rate of 6.9%. In 2008, a 12-month period, health care spending in the United States reached a breathtaking $2.4 trillion, 17% of gross domestic product. How exactly does Mr. Obama plan to stop this outrage? By encouraging Americans to make smarter choices. To help that, Mr. Obama wants government counseling for when one is dying.
I think for a lot of families to make sure that, if, heaven forbid, you contract a terminal illness, that you are somebody who's able to control this process in a dignified way that is true to your faith and true to you, how you think that end-of-life process should proceed.
Many Americans recoil at this. Controlling this process, quote-unquote, in a dignified way or not, is the thin edge of the wedge, as Patrick Buchanan writes, quote, if government intends to bend the curve of rising health care costs, and half of those costs are incurred in the last 6 months of life, and physician counselors will be sent to the seriously ill to advise them of what costs will no longer be covered and what their options are, what do you think is going to be option A? Question for Buchanan. Is Obama proposing to save money in the terminal care of sick patients in order to bail out Tim Geithner's cronies in the banking industry?
Well, it's putting it a little directly, John, but let me say this. There's no doubt about it that cost containment is one of the primary goals of this legislation. Half of all medical costs that folks incur are the last 6 months of life. A lot of folks are severely ill and terminally ill there. And what is a government agent or government counselor doing coming to the House, and what exactly is he going to recommend? And quite frankly, we all know this. One of the major proponents of this is out of Oregon, the Death with Dignity Act they've had for 12 years. One of the recommendations is going to be, would you like to end your life sooner? It's going to be recommendations or suggestions of suicide.
This is such a distortion.
What is?
What Pat has just said, that a government official is going to come and tell you how you're going to end your life. This is right-wing scare tactics built on one provision in the House bill, which says that under Medicare, if you want to visit your physician, your family physician, and you want to discuss end-of-life directives, you want to talk about hospice, that Medicare will cover that visit. You can tell your physician you want to be kept alive until you're 300 and you want to be frozen. But most people, there's nothing required about any of this, most people do not want to die in a hospital hooked up to tubes. And they want to have some control about what procedures are used on them. And I've lived this experience, as have many people. And this is an effort to give people some power over the end of their lives and how
Why don't they do the living will? Did you see his emphasis?
Living will is part of that, yes. It's where you say how you would like to be treated, what procedures you would want, if you're not in a position to speak for yourself.
President Obama spoke about living wills. Can you clarify this for us, Mr. Obama?
Nobody's going to be knocking on your door. Nobody's going to be telling you you've got to fill one out. And certainly nobody's going to be forcing you to make a set of decisions on end-of-life care based on some bureaucratic law in Washington.
Does that reassure you, Monica?
Just like he said he wasn't going to raise taxes on the middle class, just like he said he was never for a single-payer system. Come on. I'm not buying this. You look at the House bills, there are 5 competing versions of this, but when you look at the House bill, there is a provision in there for the government to come in and counsel on end-of-life issues. I think most Americans do not want the government in any way, shape, or form involved in this the most intimate decision of anybody's life. And remember that a quarter of all Medicare funding is spent in the last year of life.
Okay,
so if there is a government takeover of Medicare,
before you commence, let's see some polling here, some polling on this.
39% of Americans believe such assisted suicide is moral. 56% believe it is immoral. 60% also believe a person has a right to end his or her life if chronic extreme pain is being experienced.
Here's the question, what can individuals do in this regard?
Well, in the first place, this is all voluntary. This isn't something that is mandated by the legislation. The real issue here, though, is it's another way of trying to get costs under control. And the problem I have with Obama's program, because so much money is spent in the last 6 months of life, and that's one of the huge...
Does it sound like euthanasia?
Well, we'll call it whatever you want to call it. If people want to end their lives, you can call it whatever you want to call it. All I'm saying to you is that this is just another part of something which, in fact, he has not properly put forward in this health care program, which is how you get costs under control. He says he wants it to be revenue neutral. We can't afford revenue neutral.
You think individuals have the say over whether or not their life is continued far enough?
Yes, I think people should have the say. Yes,
you don't think that this is a matter for God?
No, I think this is a matter for the individuals.
This does not get into...
There's no law against suicide, if I may say so.
If
people are in chronic pain, they have the right...
Oh, wait a second.
Let me just finish one sentence, okay, Eleanor? I mean, all I'm saying is that this is a matter for an individual. Whatever the faith part of this thing is, it is not something that necessarily applies to all Americans.
No law against suicide, yes or no?
Look, I don't know.
Is there?
Well, you can't put somebody in prison for trying to kill himself.
Is there any state law against suicide?
The problem is moral pressure from government agents, lonely people by themselves. This is going to be cut off. They're sitting there, some ladies at 80 years old, and she says, what are my options? Well, this is one option, and this is another option. That's the danger here, John.
Yeah, but that's
what about the siblings and what they have to say about it?
This should be family, priest,
big
lawyer.
expense involved.
Get the government out of this, because we know what the government objective is, money.
Do you think pressure could come from siblings, too?
Well, yes, it can. There's no doubt about it.
Bad pressure.
There's lots of pressure, but there's nothing wrong with education. Telling people that hospice is available. If you have this treatment, it will extend your life this far, and these are the side effects. We're only talking about education. There's not talking about voluntary suicide.
I find it amazing that liberals are for this when they're going after deep cuts in Medicare, deep cuts in Medicaid, which are going broke anyway.
Issue 3.